Our first order of business is executive session for the purpose of discussing ongoing litigation, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and I so declare. So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
I'd like you to read that.
Move to open the executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation and to not reconvene in open session. To reconvene in open session. The executive session is needed to project strategy discussions affecting litigation on the stated matter. Second.
Okay, thank you. And to go into executive session, we will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Okay. Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Myself, Linda Escobedo. Aye.
And I note that Ms. Hotchkiss is absent. So we will go into executive session to reconvene at 7 o'clock. Good evening, and welcome to the August 26th Select Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and remind everyone that the meeting is being both broadcast and recorded. The first order of business is our consent agenda, on which there are town accountant's warrants and minutes of July 29th, 2019, one-day special licenses, gaining ground on September 15th, 3 to 5 p.m. at 341 Virginia Road, all alcohol beverages. Belmont Hill School, and September 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Concord Country Club, wine and malt. And the Concord Carlisle Youth Hockey on September 28th from 5:30 to 11 p.m. at the Concord Country Club, all alcoholic beverages. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, did you mention we were being recorded?
I think I did.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Did I? Yes. How about that?
Thank you.
The next item, the swearing in of the new town manager. Where is the town clerk?
So since it's,
I did not bring a
since
Bible.
it's once every 26 years or so, do we know a place we go?
That's a good question. Let's ask our piano. Right here?
Flag, go by the
Yeah.
flag.
Go by the
flag,
In the books. Could you move the chair?
There we
There you
are.
go.
All right. Do you, Stephen Crane, solemnly affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the duties incumbent on you as town manager of the town of Concord, according to the best of your abilities and understanding, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the Constitution, the laws of the Commonwealth, and the bylaws of the town of Concord, keeping uppermost in your mind what is best for the town of Concord?
I do.
Thank you.
And appropriately, the first order of business is the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and thank you to my coworkers who joined us here for that brief ceremony. So far, it's after at the end of here of day 11, it's been great so far, and I'm meeting such wonderful people, both from the community and from the organization. So it's great to be here, and thank you to the board again for giving me this opportunity. I did put a written report in the packet as a supplement. Very briefly, we are in the running for a clean vehicles grant from the Commonwealth, and if we receive it, it will allow us to retrofit some 7 F-250 pickup trucks from CPW, which will be kind of exciting. I personally, I've done a lot of sustainability stuff, and I have not seen like a heavier vehicle retrofit. So I'm really excited to see how this will work. The Concord Middle School Building Committee has selected or voted to recommend Hill International to be the owner's project manager for that project. They were highly recommended. I was not a part of the proposal review, but I did hear the discussion by the Middle School Building Committee about the proposals, and Hill was pretty overwhelmingly the favored candidate of the committee. So it was I think, unanimous support. I'm in the process of looking at the contract terms and conditions with Hill, and I would expect that by the end of the week, we'll hopefully have an agreement hashed out to provide those services. In addition to that, the Concord Public Works and their engineering department is in the process of doing what's called a cut-through study, analyzing cut-through traffic through Concord, which I know is an important thing. There was a lot of cut-throughs, especially as traffic congestion gets worse. On September 5th, they will be having an all-day session with various neighborhoods who are impacted that are being studied as impacted by cut-through traffic. Not all neighborhoods all day, but they have certain times for certain neighborhoods. So if you're in one of those neighborhoods and have been contacted by CPW, just a reminder that is September 5th. And then the Cambridge Turnpike project is ongoing. Just a reminder to the community that the institutions that are on the street, the Concord Museum, the Emerson House, and Millbrook Farms, they are open during construction. Sometimes it's not easy to get down there, but we hope residents will remember to visit those businesses while their front doors are kind of torn up. And then and hopefully by mid to late October, there'll be some binder coat down, so the road will be much more passable than it is today. So it is getting better. We are getting closer. And then the week of September 23rd is Preparedness Week, and there'll be some activities associated with that folks should either check with our sustainability coordinator, Kate Hanley, or check our website for information on. And I just want to commend the work of both the police department and Concord Public Works and how they handled the water main break that happened last late Thursday night into Friday. Water main breaks happen a lot, but 16-inch mains, for those of you who may not know, it's an enormous pipeline that puts out an awful lot of water when it breaks. And I was fortunate to go out and visit the scene Friday morning when they were cleaning up, and really the job that those departments and others did to get together and try and minimize to the greatest extent the loss of time and impact to commuters was really admirable, and I commend them for a job well done. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the select board? Susan?
I just have one. Stephen, is the grant expected to cover the entire cost of the conversion of the trucks?
I think there is a local share as well. Is it 50%?
It's 80% grant, 20%.
Okay,
20% local share.
thanks.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions? Thank you very much. I have virtually no remarks, just to say there was a very successful street day, which was a while ago now, but I think it was the 11th or the 12th in town here. Very successful, that's great. And the other and important remark is why we welcome our new town manager again. I want to thank Kate Hodges, who is hiding over here in the corner, who served as interim town manager from Chris's retirement until Stephen took over on the 12th of August. 12th of August. So again, Kate, thank you very much. Thank you. And with that introduction, you're up. Next order of business is an update on the wireless facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager, happily, just that. So we had received 3 proposals. We actually, I believe this is our 6th time coming in front of the board, at least in the last 18 months or so, to discuss the proposals for downtown and looking for some connectivity down there. So we received a proposal from Verizon Wireless, And then received 2 proposals from tower developers, US Wireless Incorporated and Wireless Edge LLC. Verizon's proposal was only for the police station property. You may recall some number of years ago, Verizon Wireless submitted a proposal. Was it Verizon Wireless or AT&T? I'm sorry, I'm looking at Marcia Rasmussen. Verizon Wireless, okay. Submitted a proposal for citing something on the DPW and Department of Planning and Land Management campus on Keyes Road, which went through a number of the, regulatory things that they had to do, and ultimately it was decided by the Historic Districts Commission that would not be appropriate as it impacted the site both from the river and from the North Bridge. So Verizon's proposal was only for the police station. It was for a monopole that would be set in the back of the property, adjacent to the wetlands that are back, behind the station, and close to the fire department side, with most of the equipment being ground mounted in a small 20 by 20 shed that would either be immediately adjacent to the parking area that's there by the fire department and the small storage shed that's along that road. What they had, the town team looked at, and it was really determined that we would lose what little parking we have there. It would also be relatively disruptive to the operation of the police and fire department. And so for those reasons, we believe that proposal should be rejected, would be our recommendation. Looking at the tower developer, both of their proposals for US Wireless and Wireless Edge, they did spec out 2 proposals each. They both proposed something for the police and fire station and for the Keyes Road campus. Both were not monopoles. They were large co-locator poles capable of locating up to 4, if not 5. Carriers on them, much larger footprint, much larger disruption to those operations, both police and fire, and for DPW and planning and land management, and for a number of reasons, and the main being a total disruption of the services that are already located there. We are inclined to deny those as well, or to put those down. So as of right now, just to recap, we have done 3 requests for proposals. The first was for the Emerson Cupola, which is the property on Stowe Street that houses the Emerson umbrella. It was for a single locator, single carrier to be located entirely inside of the cupola with a small footprint, anywhere between 10 by 15 to 15 by 20, in a small shed located in the exterior of the building, but out of sight from any place on Stowe Street. We received 1 bid for that, Verizon Wireless. We went through the process of discussing that at a formal session with the select board and members of the public. It was determined that we would want to exhaust all other possibilities before going to there, which led us to number 2, which was to look at any other downtown facilities, anything else that could house it, including the visitor center and multiple others. We were not successful in getting any responses to that, particularly when we just put out a request for quotations. My understanding is that Verizon Wireless had approached many other independent business owners, including the one church in the downtown that doesn't house any wireless technology in it, and they were not interested at this time. We looked at Crosby's Corner. Crosby's Corner leadership is not interested at this time. We looked at other areas along Lowell Road. Those do not meet the height requirements. We looked at other areas in the upland, including the high school. Those would meet the height requirements, but would not necessarily engulf the search ring that would include the lower part of downtown Main Street and the business district, which of course is one of the things, we're in the part that it wouldn't reach right now. And then we did this final RFP, which we didn't figure any of the recommendations that we got for that would be feasible. So we are at a bit of a crossroads right now, and I don't have much else to report. Sorry, it's not better news.
Well, thanks for coming. So what's the next step?
I suppose that's up to the town and the board. I guess we have a number of options, which we've discussed just as a town team. One would be to do nothing, always an option, and to see.
We can't do that because we have a safety issue in the downtown.
Well, it's not a good option, but it is an option. So there's do nothing. There is move ahead with one of the proposals that we've received, but know that the impact on any of the properties that are going to be on are going to be great, and somewhat unknown until we start the process, but likely costly and probably not efficient, to renew one of the sites that were not necessarily voted down, but looked upon as perhaps a last resort, or I don't think I have a fourth right now, but we could think of
And
one.
there was no proposal that came in to put a monopole over at Public Works?
No. No, there was not. We anticipated perhaps getting one. I think that what we have found in talking just basically off the cuff with providers is that that went through a very lengthy and costly process and never really came to fruition. And there was not a lot of confidence that the result would be different. I know that the Verizon Wireless legal team and their radio frequency engineer team went and met with the Historical Districts Commission probably almost eight or 9 months ago now. And they, I wasn't at that meeting. Were you at that meeting? No, but let me just have, yeah.
Marshall?
No,
It sounded to me at the end that they were, Historic Districts was saying, well, come back to us and say, do you really need a 100-foot tower? Can you do an 80-foot tower? Like there was some willingness to think more about that option, especially after Dory Kehoe showed everyone the picture of the giant brick tower that was there when that was actually the power plant. So it wouldn't be unprecedented. So I'm kind of disappointed to hear that they didn't pursue that.
So my understanding is Verizon asked for a review or a written documentation or something from the commission that would certainly not binding because it wouldn't be a permit, but to at least allow them some understanding of whether it would be fruitful for them to, proceed again. And they didn't receive that. And as far as the structure that you're talking about was a smokestack, and at least Verizon, when discussing it with them, was not interested in doing that. And I think that we would have to think about what that would mean for the town to put something like that of that magnitude up.
And there was no response from the Historic Districts Commission? They formally asked them in writing, and there was no response from them, one way or the other?
I believe they asked them at the meeting if they could have something.
And they said,
I don't believe they said anything. I think it was,
I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly. Do you remember, Marcia?
No, I'm sorry.
No.
okay, Stephen.
I have some experience working on cell tower projects from a previous stop, and I'm relatively new to this issue here in Concord.
Well, we're happy to hand it to you.
So I guess what I would ask is, you're asking next steps. I would ask the board to give the team and I a little bit of time to help me get a little more acclimated with it, talk through some, so I understand better the options that have been done.
Please, I just think we've been talking about this now for quite some time.
5 years.
Yeah, and, we really, I think, had demonstrated to us not too awfully long ago that we had a real safety issue in downtown, so I think we really have got to get this resolved. So if you could, and get back to us as soon as you can with some way forward, and thanks, Kate, for all the work you did.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry it wasn't better news.
Well, it is what it is. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a change in manager, alternative manager, and officers associated with Section 12 Club all alcohol license at the Neshotah Country Club at 1861 Sudbury Road. Could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
Is there a second? Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Would you please introduce yourself
My
to
name
us?
is Robert Carpenter. Everybody knows me as Chris, though, so.
Okay.
And we have submitted what we think is a complete packet for your review regarding my change as being the manager of the club, and also the victular license.
And can you tell us a little bit about your background professionally?
My professional background was I'm a golf professional by trade, but I was recently promoted to being the general manager of Neshotah Country Club. So part of that is assuming the responsibilities for everything at the club, but one of which is the club's alcohol license. So I've been at Neshotah for 15 years now, so I know the club pretty well.
And you are knowledgeable about the requirements of hours being on the premises, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and I've been TIP certified, and so I've gone through the aspects of me becoming knowledgeable of what's required, and
You still get to play golf?
eventually. We have a small project underway at the club at the moment, so
Sure, yeah.
quite extensive.
Chris, and the application is all, Chris, the application is complete? Okay. Does the board have any questions? Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Linda?
I move to approve the applications from the Neshotah Country Club, Inc., located at 1861 Sudbury Road, for change of director, manager, and alternate manager associated with existing Section 12 Club all alcohol license.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you.
glad you're here.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
As an aside, when is the construction expected to be completed?
Memorial Day of 2020.
2020?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Who's going to do the introducing? Ms. Hodges.
It's been so long. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is my pleasure to introduce Beth Williams, who is our new Tourism and Visitor Services Manager. She began approximately a week or so ago after a pretty exhaustive search. As you may know, we had this initiative between the town manager's office and the recreation department pretty soon after we took over the operation of the visitor center. We really wanted to have somebody who had a commitment and passion for tourism and visitor services, and can also help bridge the gap between some of the downtown business association and the economic vitality that we were trying to pull into some of the town reins. And so we had a couple of searches, and we're glad it took as long as it did, because something happened to align the stars right so Beth would come to us, and it was a unanimous decision. She had 3 interview processes, and it was unanimous on all of them. So we are really, really excited to have her here, and I just wanted her to talk for a few minutes about her background and to tell you how wonderful she is.
Not my strong suit talking about myself.
Welcome, Ms. Williams. We're
I just
delighted.
want to thank everybody for bringing me here. Kate and her team were really instrumental in putting together this amazing opportunity for me. And I'm grateful to everybody that contributed to that wonderful document, Envision Concord, because a lot of that talks about the potential here. And I have to say, in 10 days, I have logged 100,000 steps, and I have been all over town. I have been to as many attractions and businesses. I have eaten and walked. I have taken my guide's walking tour 4 times. Pretty soon I'll be able to pass the test and really be a Concord tour guide. So I'm really thrilled. The welcome has been unbelievable. Everybody seems really eager to work together, which is very heartwarming to me, to walk into a town that's open arms and ready for this kind of an opportunity. I was at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem for 9 years. And as part of that role, I sat as the president of the board for Destination Salem, which is the tourist arm for Salem. So I know a little bit about tourists and how many can fit in a small square mile. So I'm really just excited. I think everybody here, the businesses and the different attractions, you guys have an amazing wealth of opportunity here. And everybody is doing already this wonderful job of presenting themselves and promoting themselves. And I'm really just excited to bring everybody together and sort of even take it even higher and see who else wants to come and visit us. So thank you for having me.
Terrific. Any questions we have, Ms.?
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're delighted you're here, and as you, I hope already ascertained, this is very important to the town. We've articulated that this, as we're calling it, vitality, which incorporates tourism and building business sustainability and economic development, really important to the town, so we're really glad you're here.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
Well,
I
we'll
look forward to getting to know the rest of you
keep
too.
that thought. No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the town library agreement. I have a number of folks from the library here tonight. Sherry, do you want to come up? So just the background here, there's an existing agreement between the town and the library corporation. It's a longstanding agreement. As near as I can tell, the last time it was revised was about 10 years ago.
Correct.
Before that, probably 10 years, 12 years even before that was the last time. And there's no dire problem or anything that we have to solve. It's just, as many of you might recall, we had appointed a number of years ago a public-private partnership committee. In fact, the chair of the committee is here with us this evening. And one of the recommendations from the that committee was that the town, on a sort of ongoing basis, revise and look at those agreements it has with private organizations. The library, of course, is incredibly important to the town. And so the town manager and I will be the folks from our side, and we're delighted to have all of you here. You might introduce the other folks from the corporation
I'd
to
be
us.
happy
First,
to.
introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Sherry Litwack, and I'm president of the Library Corporation. And this evening we have Rick Briggs, who is the treasurer, and we have Pam Gannon, our newest trustee, Mario Favorito, who is the vice president, Di Clymer, and Sandy Smith, who is the clerk.
Clerk.
I think we have, what, 6 of, or 8 of them, let's see. We have 6 of the 9. And the other, I might as well name the others, so John Boynton, Christina Blau, and Jeff Adams. Good.
Terrific.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Well, as you may know, the agreement, of course, is quite detailed and all of that, but an easy way for you to understand is that the town sort of does the operating budgets of the library, and the library corporation is responsible for sort of the financial, fiscal, construction, facilities, grounds,
The buildings,
special
the
collection.
grounds and the special collections, that's
right.
correct.
And so we have that shared responsibility to continue to make sure that the library is the treasure that it's been for a long time and continues in the future. So the library folks will choose their representatives, and we'll get busy working on this. And when we have a draft, so to speak, ready to go, we'll bring it back to the select board, and we'll be able to discuss it here with you folks in open session. So thanks very much for all of you for coming this evening, and we certainly look
And
forward
we look forward to working
getting
with
this
you.
job done.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next order of business is municipal facilities update. Kate, is there, a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, may I have something to say as a member of the Public-Private Partnership Committee? Or do you want me to wait till town comments?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind waiting, that'd be great, thank you. Do you want to introduce your team, or, and Ryan? So this is the municipal facilities update, TBA Architects. Kate?
So we have Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kate Hodges, again, Deputy Town Manager, and I'm joined by Kate Hanley, our Sustainability Director, and Ryan Orr, our Facilities Director. And we make up the town side of the team for the Facilities Master Plan and assessment. And after a relatively comprehensive RFP process about 18 months ago, we hired TBA architects who are with us today, and they did yeoman's work. We had well over 20 sites that they reviewed extremely comprehensively, went through, every element of the building, top to bottom, all of the interior designs, all of the mechanical systems, all of the electrical systems, the roof. Took time to meet with all the people who were working in the building, people who visit the building, trying to figure out how we use it, how we'd like to use it, and how we think we might use it, 5, 10, 15 years from now. And through that have developed a master plan, which they will go over in great detail here this evening to show you sort of our pitfalls, where we're falling short, and then give some options. I think one thing that is important to note is that we're inadequate in every building for a whole variety of reasons, and that isn't meant to be inflammatory by any means. It's just we are a community that has outgrown our buildings, and that's a great problem to have, but it's a problem that needs attention and it needs fixing. And so it has been sort of a long time coming to this because we've been discussing it. If you recall, the money for this study came from the town meeting in 2017, and so it's been quite a ways, and it isn't because of lack of trying or effort, but because this is an enormous undertaking. And so I'd like to introduce Russ Feldman, who was the lead on this, and then he can introduce you to his team members and go over.
I asked Dory if she would wait, but I suspect this was going to be a rather detailed presentation. So Dory, if you
Yes.
had a quick comment to come up now rather than, so come on up and then, no, she can come up. Just stay put, Kate. I'd forgotten that this was, so. Or you have a long thing to read?
No, I'll make it very brief.
Please do.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Dory Keogh. I'm a former member of the former Public-Private Partnership Committee, and I represent several members of the committee who have some concerns about working on the project now, doing the update of the partnership. We don't have anything to say about what you're doing about it because we don't know what the issues might be. And that, I will abbreviate here.
Please.
In appreciation. But we are concerned about the fact that the commission, the Public-Private Committee, was put together in 2016. We reported then. And in 2013, the Select Board put up their policies and procedures. Two of the selectmen are new since then. The town manager is new. And we would like to hand you those policies that you proposed, because our concern is that one of the keynote of the Public-Private Partnership Committee's report was the importance of public involvement in the formation and reviewing of all of the partnerships. What changes may take place or may not, we really hope will not be presented. This is nearly a fait accompli for the board's approval, as we just heard saying. So unless there's pressing reasons for putting together this partnership in a fast manner, we hope that you will do it in a slow way where there's public involvement. And just to try and wrap up quickly, in the Select Board's report, which they did on July 16th, and their public policies and procedures for putting together public-private partnerships, for renewing partnerships or existing, the idea of public involvement from the very get-go, the very beginning of discussions, was paramount. So we have no axe to grind in this, believe me. It's just that we'd like you to follow the procedures that you set up, which we really highly recommend. So I will pass out at the end of the meeting, and I'll give you, if it's okay, copies of the two articles that I mentioned. One was the public-private partnership report, and the other is the select board
Just
adoption.
electronically send them to Chris and he
I
can
I
make
have
sure.
some hard copies, which I'm happy to get rid of, and you can send the number that you want as well, but I'll send you the
Thank you.
electronic. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your patience, Ms. Hodges, appreciate it.
Not a problem. So, Mr. Feldman, if you and your team could come up. I'll sit on that end if you want to sit there.
Good to see you again. We have this electronically. I don't know if we'll present or we can work off of the hard copies.
These are all the same.
Down there.
Yes, these are copies of the slide presentation that we have.
So why don't Kate, I think those can probably all go to the audience.
We realized we've never actually presented in this room. We've met. Presented.
If we have some, maybe some. Oh, okay. All right, good evening. If you could begin simply by introducing yourselves, that would be great.
Thank you. My name again is Russell Feldman. I'm the principal of TBA Architects. Here are Justin Humphreys and Bob Jeffries. They are the other principals of our firm. We're a Concord firm and are pleased to be here to talk to you today about work that we've been doing over the past couple of months. As Kate mentioned, looking at quite a variety of your facilities, and what we're looking to do here with these copies that you have before you is run down our basic approach that we took to the project, the steps we took to gather the information that we're presenting here, assessing that, and then coming to our findings
All right.
at this point.
We look forward to it.
As Kate touched on, the study was very comprehensive. We looked at 14 sites. We looked at 18 buildings. It comprised 245,000 square feet of town space. It included 35 departments that housed 260 employees. What we did looking at that is we made existing condition surveys. We looked at the buildings themselves, and we also, and the sites, and then we looked at the departmental organization and the occupancy of those buildings. We looked at or created facilities condition reports for the buildings that are certainly going to remain and perhaps be expanded upon. We developed existing layout plans that allocated. First of all, we verified what the existing conditions were, and then assessed how they were occupied, what people sat where, and the utilization of the space. And we quantified that against existing standards, space planning standards, if you will, that enable us to assess where the crowding is, where the over occupancy is. And then based on all of that, we developed 3 tiers of work. We call them scenarios A, B, and C. Scenario A is basically what it takes to repair the buildings, and we looked at them individually and repair each individual building, more or less maintaining the same use that you have. Scenario B, which considered expansion, and Scenario C, which looked at a reconfiguration of all departments, or potentially so. And again, this is a very comprehensive look. So one of the things that we have, and you'll see a little bit of it here, is that by disaggregating all the work, we can look at individual buildings, individual departments, individual sites, and as a working document as well. And I would like to offer this as an initial thought, that although we're calling it a master plan, what it really is intended to be is a working tool for you, because circumstances change constantly, and any given plan may anticipate change, but you can't know what the changes will be or what, for example, what properties become available to you. And so what this is intended to do is give you enough information that you can competently assess opportunities and what the best purposes to spend are. I do want to touch, one of the things we did is in several select buildings, three-dimensional scans, digital scans of the structures and the systems, so that you have an extremely detailed documentation of the buildings that you have. So when the time comes to renovate or expand, you are starting out with an extremely precise set of documents. We mentioned that we looked at space standards, each department. We interviewed the department heads. We asked them to assess their existing needs and also their needs over the next 10 and 30 years to see what sort of changes might ensue. We did extremely detailed assessment of some of your existing facilities. For example, the impossibly small numbers that you see on the right side of the screen are every truck in your DPW and police and fire departments, their space needs for each vehicle, so that we were looking to see what sorts of space needs are necessary to meet the facilities that you have now. One of the things we mentioned is taking your existing space use, and comparing it with standards. And what you see here are breakdowns of each department. These are aggregated, in this case, by site. So, for example, on the screen, you see 22 Monument Square, where we are here, and looking at each department, how many square feet are associated with those departments, what a standardized number of square feet would be to serve that function if it were in a new construction. So you're comparing it against the standard. What we've got there is a little column called delta, the difference between the two. And then we, as you'll see later, move into the notion of what sort of changes might be possible. We also did a code analysis of each building to see from an accessibility standpoint and also a public safety standpoint what's necessary as another level of improvement that would be appropriate. And then we touched on an existing database that you already have, which is an extremely rich body of knowledge that you were able to mine and organize. This is, what's it called, the Dude Solutions, that's it, right. Looking at literally every piece of equipment that you have, every boiler, every plumbing fixture, put it on a life cycle and assess the value. And what we did is organize that in a way that then could be looked at building by building over time to assess what, for example, would be a necessary set of spending over the next 10 years. Anything you want to add to that? Touching on then the proposals themselves, and again, we have these three scenarios. And as you'll see, and we'll dig into this a little bit, one involves repairing the buildings more or less as is. One involves renovating and expanding to the extent that they can be renovated and expanded. And then a third scenario where there could be a reconfiguration of departments, perhaps in new facilities.
Okay.
To use the townhouse as an example, if you turn to the next slide, this is the area requirements for 22 Monument Square itself. We touched on this a little earlier when you look at each department. And there are layers of information that, this is already mind-numbing, and I appreciate that. Behind this is even more detail, which will spare you. But we're trying to get...
Ask, is this similar to what we saw a few months ago? Not at all.
Well,
Same townhouse.
it is similar. It's the same townhouse, but this is the end of what I was giving you as an update based on what we thought we were going to have with no numbers.
Got it.
But you recall we didn't get through that,
I do recall.
so you didn't see all of it. So.
And hopefully this will give you some context for how these numbers work. And in this case, as we were touched on, that in this, you may have seen some of this a few months ago, which is to say your existing condition and how the departments are configured within this building. Then we looked into, and may have touched on when you looked at it last, how that fit against the space standards. So we're able to do that across all departments. Then what we also did is look at each building, if you look on the left side, what you'll see is something that we've done for all the properties, which is we developed floor plans that are accurate, and we confirmed all of them. Sometimes we started with existing drawings, but of course years of changes ensued that we were able to catch up on. Each of these plans is more or less accurate to the present. And what you see in a color code fashion is each departmental use, and those all relate to the numbers behind it. If you look to the right, you'll see what we are talking about by way of a proposal in the A scenario, which involves a reconfiguration of your main floor and how the departments might be configured. We were able to meet with the various department heads over these plans, and this is again true for every department, and got feedback from them, which we'll be able to include in the report as well. On the upper floors, you see again a similar treatment. We're sitting in the upper left corner of the left side plan, and that's our current selectmen's room, which you'll notice on the right side is white, because we make no proposed changes to this room. So what you'll see in the scenarios A, as we step through all of these properties, and we're not going to do that tonight, so please, it's okay, don't panic. But what we are going to do is take you through how this all fits together.
Good.
And in this case, you'll see the areas on the upper floor that we did talk about reconfiguring to improve the function, improve safety. I see you looking up at the, are you with us on the? Okay. Sure.
So most of the changes there were back in the HR.
That's exactly right, yep. Looking likewise at the police and fire, in this case, there was some reconfiguration. It's proposal B, though, isn't it, what we're looking at? In this case, looking at your existing facilities and I should say not minor changes, but limited changes that you see on the right side. The aim of those changes was to improve the secure perimeter of the police operations and limit the areas that the public comes in. Right now, the public is actually carried through rather deep into the police operations, and so we're looking to avoid that. This is a fairly simple change, so we made it as part of the A proposal.
Okay.
And this upper floor is more of that same set of changes. And now you come to, at this point, what no doubt everybody's looking for, which is what is this going to cost for each of these? So at this level of, how shall I put it, this level of intervention, which is to say doing what's needed for safety and doing what's needed to catch up on deferred maintenance and to project over a reasonable 10-year period what the building as you currently use it needs. You see this on every site, and you'll note that this is the first time you'll see this directly. I do have a pen.
That's all right.
If you look at this directly, you'll see 14.
Just saw the number on it.
Yeah, I know. That's all it takes. In this case, what you see are 3 columns and quite a few rows. The rows relate to each address. We organized our own documents by project number, as you see, A1, A2A, A2B, A2C. In that case, those all relate to the DPW campus. And you have 3 buildings, of course, on the DPW campus, 133, 135, and 141. Then you see also each other site, the visitor center, the townhouse itself, which we talked about, the assessor's building, the Hunt Gym, and as everyone sees, the public safety building, Everett Street.
So this is a comprehensive statement.
It is.
For scenario A.
Yes, and this relates to, in effect, all non-school related functions as we understand it.
And is there somewhere, I understand it, what I don't, I mean, I'll look at this more carefully. Isn't there a 3rd floor in the police department building?
Yes.
So it's just didn't put it in here.
We didn't put it here.
As an example of what you'd see for every floor.
And is there a way to summarize the way you have financially the added space or usable square footage, or so what, I get how much it costs, what do we get?
We do, and
Oh,
and the other
pictures.
stuff we brought here is
Got that.
backup
Okay, great.
with that.
Thank you.
And certainly in the final report, you'll
Yeah,
have all
okay.
of that. The way we plan to organize the report is there will be quite a number of appendices attached to it, which is sort of behind all the numbers that
Right.
people can maybe take stock of. Our intent here is to show that each building has a certain amount of money that's really needed in order to bring the systems up to speed. And again, this doesn't relate to use, this relates to technology, roof, boilers, things of that sort. The spending that would be necessary. And in fact, we're able to distinguish very specifically because the Dude Solutions, I just can't, I stop at Dude. The Dude Solutions documents are things that we were able to look at, ratify to some extent, touch on, update, for example, that there are already things that have been done. And please keep in mind that all these numbers here, the A scenarios, are a moving target. Every time the town spends some money, you're pulling things out of here. This gives you a larger picture that might enable you to budget for that. So, and again, over 10 years' time, that could be drawn down for these sorts of projects.
So, excuse me. I understand mechanical, electrical, plumbing system costs.
Yes.
But can you just give a better definition for the building system costs?
Windows, doors, envelope, roofs, structure if necessary, finishes on the interior.
So, for example, what are some of the maintenance issues that have to be done at the public safety building?
Public safety,
Because that looks like the most expensive one.
everything, yes.
There is,
Everything, yeah.
well, the public safety building has quite a bit of mechanical work that needs to be done. It's a mixture of systems, some of them working better than others and not distributing properly. So there's that. There's technology concerns. There's renovations that have been done over time that updated some areas but not other areas. There's exterior walls that are still uninsulated in that building. There's real storage issues.
Would it be a fair statement to say too that for the mechanical column, that if we didn't make any changes in the building, any of the buildings, a significant amount of those costs would need to be incurred anyway?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And I think most of this is sort of ongoing maintenance, deferred maintenance, things that need to be done just to keep.
I'm just thinking when we're going to talk about this to the public, and if we get to some number somewhere, this says 7 million and change, right?
Yes.
But the reality in terms of additional costs that the town is going to be incurred, most of this maintenance stuff would be things that we would have to plan for anyway.
That is exactly the point, that our A scenario is that. It's not anything other than what's necessary. But to the extent that your functioning government as it changes is a necessity, that's not what this talks about. This talks about
But I'm
keeping.
thinking in the budgetary, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here. Suppose we were not even having this discussion and you were planning a 10-year expenditure for maintenance stuff. This column would be an estimate of what you would spend.
Somewhat correct.
Kind of
So
correct.
the issue with the way that we've been budgeting thus far is that up until a couple of years ago, we didn't have a facilities division.
Right.
And so we had a line item in the budget called townwide building maintenance, and it was woefully underfunded. So if you look at this list, there's about 7.4 almost $1 million worth of things that should have been done or we would normally do over the course of, say, a 5-year period. The last 5 years, the town, at least through the budget process, has only allocated $935,000 total
No.
in the last 5 fiscal years for buildings. And so you have 7.4 worth of things that need to be done, say over a 5-year period, and have not even been given, a little more than 10% of that. And so that's what we're facing, is that not only are we inadequate on a lot of the buildings, we're also not maintaining them as we should, and so the costs that are the driving force of that are only going up. And so what we're doing now, through Ryan and his team, we're triaging things that have happened, and we're only now getting to a preventative maintenance schedule, and that's only on the buildings where that can be done.
Still a ways off.
No,
The
I-
police and fire station, we don't
understand
have that, because what we do is we have a series of system failures
Yeah.
that then require some type of Band-Aid.
No, my point
I
is
think you're pretty accurate, that,
a
yes. it's-
simpler point, and that is we were talking to the
if you didn't do
citizens
anything
about
over
what
next
the
10 years,
new.
That's what the cost would be. But 5 to 10 years, it's.
Okay, great, so.
Although,
scenario-
one thing I'd like to state about these numbers and everything you will see going forward, these are 2019 numbers.
Yeah, sure.
We do not attempt to inflate that forward because your guess is as good as mine. Everybody can change on that. What we can do is identify costs presently.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, ideally, the way we've been employing these sorts of studies is that there may be sort of an annualization of this that then you could adjust up and recognize.
Keep current.
Yes, and keep current that way.
All right.
Okay.
One other point is it does not include what's basically routine maintenance. There's a whole separate set of spreadsheets that detail hours and, a filter change and things
Yeah.
like that. This is equipment that's being replaced.
All right. B.
Now, stepping into scenario B. Scenario B envisions expanding existing structures to the extent that we're able to do so, that your sites allow, that the structures themselves allow. And again, we basically looked at departmental needs and did what we could to modify them. And actually, Bob, if you could take I think the first one is the B. We printed, I think one of the, yeah, this is a chart that, it might seem obscure to start with. That seems to be the nature of the business. But once you get into it, you will understand, it might be helpful to you anyway.
All right.
In looking at what each of our proposals for the different structures does to each department. And by that I mean, for example, there are certain departments that are expanded within the existing structure. Certain departments get brand new as part of an addition to the structure. Other departments are even moved or reconfigured a little bit to optimize the outcome. And you'll see a little bit more as we take you through one example, which is the Department of Public Works, where we looked at the site, and in this case, looked at the existing buildings to the left, and the possibility, just in terms of vehicular movement and sort of feasible site design, what is possible on the site to expand largely the garage bays, because that's where the great deficiency is. You have a lot of your equipment exposed to the weather and unable to be housed properly. You also have a serious deficiency in salt storage and other elements. And so we looked at the site and assessed what was possible to do on the site. This did involve, if you look more in detail, you'll see that we also expand each building on the site to the extent that it's possible to do, and develop numbers and construction costs associated with that. For example, on Kai's Road, the next slide you'll see is 135.
And just a minute, they're really constrained because of wetlands and stuff.
Indeed,
here.
yes, and in fact, I believe if you look at the
Those colored lines are
Exactly.
probably
We
the 25,
had that
50,
in
100
mind.
foot setback.
And one of the things we did as part of the study here, again, in an effort at documenting, sort of meaningfully documenting your existing facilities, you invested in a survey, which is a topographic survey that identified the wetlands quite specifically as well as the buildings. So our planning is informed by an existing condition which is current. And again, much like the 3D scanning that we did in certain of your buildings, you have very rich knowledge to make decisions going forward.
All right.
So in this case, you're looking at 135 Kai's, and on several slides, you'll see again an existing floor plan, which exists for all of your documents, all of your sites and structures, and then a proposal B, which involves some level of expansion and reconfiguration. On the next slide, there's a little bit more of that. There's not a lot of of expansion that was possible on this building, but we were able to do that. And as you'll see when we look at the figures, and again, a good deal of information behind these figures, how many square feet were expanded, and at least, and this is our sort of framework, this is a first cut at reorganizing your departments in light of the expansion or existing needs that we were able to identify. It can only be improved. You know, our goal here is not to design it. Our goal here is to prove feasibility.
Okay.
Similarly, looking at the townhouse, we did consider expansion scenarios here and substantial reconfiguration in a sense. Main Street, 1276 is an interesting example. This was a building that, at the time, we explored for reuses for the preschool. I'm sorry, relocating the preschool out of it in this case. Okay, perhaps you heard that, out of Harvey Wheeler to Church. Actually, one of you guys could probably tell this story better than me.
Well, we looked at 55 Church as the new preschool and moving the functions out of 55 Church Street across the parking lot and into this building. But after discussions with staff and uses in that building, Council on Aging needs those spaces. So we then revised it, and I believe the preschool is now going to go to the Ripley School. Those spaces are going to be repurposed for Council on Aging. It mostly has to do with crafts and other teaching stations. And 55 Church has a minor reorganization, mostly to get a little bit of separation between the office function of that building, and also there's some recreational uses, and there's a little bit of conflict that we looked at reorganizing. So the major thing here is that the preschool will move out, Council on Aging will take over that space, and 55 Church will have a minor reconfiguration.
Actually, Ripley came on the scene after we were initially commissioned to do the study, and so we were working with all sites except that, and then by having Ripley, the opportunity for preschool there, something we were able to study. Now, I did see at least some of you flip to the next page. You just couldn't resist. So there you have it. Now, these are, again, individual sort of site-specific dollars for construction budget and what we would suggest is a project budget, recognizing, of course, there's design, project management, furniture, fixtures, and equipment that would sometimes, not be included in initial construction budget. Now, these figures, as you see here, well, they are what they are. I'm happy to go through individual ones if you have any specific questions about it. Mostly, again, our goal here is to sort of position you so that when you have an opportunity to look at all the information, you can make better sense of it. But in this case, then, to take a big one, if you look at the DPW scenario, and this is part of our C scenario planning as well, reconfiguring the DPW, as you saw on the site, with all those additional buildings, we estimated it to be about a $20 million proposition or a $29 million proposition for you. It's the biggest item clearly on this. Now, I think it's important to mention that these scenarios sometimes meet your program needs and sometimes they do not, because we're operating with your existing buildings and sites, and we do the best we can in light of what we see as the capacity of those buildings and those sites to house your departments. And this then is the best we could do with that. Part of what you'll see is how those programs meet or fall short of your departmental needs.
Okay.
Now, moving to scenario C.
Before you move to C, may I just ask a question about B?
Of course.
As an example, when you list the Everett Street renovation, does that include site adaptation or changes? Or you're just talking about the building?
On that particular one, that's just talking about the buildings.
And some of the rest of them, would it,
Yeah, Everett's a little more complicated
Yeah.
because your ownership, you don't have ownership of it now. So the sort of master planning of that was a little too hypothetical for us to get into. We just looked
but
at
the others
building.
would include some site?
Yes.
Oh, yes. The others, we did consider site at the B scenario level.
All right.
Now, moving to C, you'll notice that there are actually 6 scenarios that we have explored. This involves relocating different departments and different, yeah, well, actually, why don't we pass these out and this out? Here, let me-
So let me ask you, as you pass, relocation was not managerially driven, but space-driven?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Oh, for example, if I was the town manager, I would want the finance people to be very near me.
Yes, yes. So that was part of our interview process to conceive of possible reorganizations. But again, as you see here, perhaps by looking at that first, the squares and dots table that we've got here, does everybody have one of these? What that relates, you'll see 2 things. First, this table, which compares in a similar fashion. I apologize. This is where it gets a little complicated, if it hasn't been complicated enough already. Now we're looking at departments. All along, in a sense, we've been looking at sites and buildings. So we start with sites, and it's easy to talk about the planning staff in 141 Kais because that's where they are, and so what their needs are in relation to that. The scenario C frees that. So now we're looking at departments, and where do departments belong, and how might they be configured. So what you'll see on the right side of this slide, and you have in larger, more legible sense in the 11 by 17 that we just passed out, is the 6 different columns of the 6 different configuration scenarios that we'll take you through very quickly. And they show how the various departments are organized. And as you point up, for example, sometimes there is a administrative center, which is considered, that involves all the town manager-related departments, in a sense, from assessors to planning, and bringing that under one central organization, new facility somewhere. Okay. Others look at different scenarios like that. And you'll notice also that in this particular table, you have 3 lines at the top: proposed new gross square footage, renovated gross square footage, and site requirements in acres. And the reason we look at it this way, and this is part of a spreadsheet that relates to departmental needs, and we've explored this in a couple of ways. One of the things that we understand occasionally happens for you is a property will come up, and it might have 12 acres. Well, what can we do with that? This will actually help you think about that. It also, how many square feet is the building that you might move into? Well, how many square feet do we need? So it starts to be more of an organic tool.
Well, that's that complication of what makes this such a very complicated problem.
It does.
Compared to a school where you've got a site.
Exactly.
That's where it's going to go.
Yeah, from a planning and financial planning standpoint, schools are a school. Brutal as it is from an expense standpoint, it's clear, it's needed. This is, and that's why we hesitate actually calling it a master plan. It's really more like a tool for your own continuing planning.
Okay.
So
let's wade into the weeds here.
Let's go into the weeds a little bit, right? The first scenario involves a new municipal center, and if you start looking at the graphics here, did everybody see a couple of these? I know you got them? Okay, great, I wasn't sure. We have a lot more than I thought, I guess. As long as everybody's got one. Oh, you did?
Seen them, but
Okay.
it's extra.
There are extra, is extra, yeah. I could use it too, because this gets a little small on the slides, you're right. What we're trying to do here is help you envision what each of these scenarios consists of. The first one is a new building on a new site for basically all the town administrative departments, and you see that under the sort of big shed. And then the fire department, the police station, and also a fire substation. And one of the things, of course, which is unique for the fire department, is that you do need distance for the two facilities, and that creates the second scenario, as you'll see. So this involves new buildings of all of those departments. Then we also propose renovated, or at least explore renovated buildings with additions, including the municipal light plant, the Concord Carousel Preschool, which is at Ripley now, or would be in this case, the Concord Recreation at 90 Stowe Street, and the BD Center on 498 Walden. All of those would be renovated and expanded. Buildings that would be renovated but not expanded include 55 Church and 1276 Main. Buildings to remain as is in this scenario include 58 Main, the Visitor Center, where we actually never, well, we do propose a possible expansion, but that's a very minor scenario. The Knox Trail, location of the bus depot, and the DPW, because we take we consider the DPW separately. So in this case, this scenario does not involve any change in the DPW. And then finally, by reconfiguring all of that, we identify buildings with no, unprogrammed, potentially surplus, which includes 141 Keyes, Walden Street, the existing police and fire, Court Lane, Main Street, the other fire substation, Everett Street, and this building.
Okay.
And then you'll see a little dollar signs attached to all of those, just because at least it could possibly be a source of revenue for the
I think
town.
we're going to sell 22 million.
Well, that is quite possible, but we
But I got
envision
it.
these things. Now, the next scenario makes a single change, but it's a very important one. The next scenario shows that there's no new substation constructed, and that Walden Street is expanded. In this case, the police department moves out of Walden, the public safety building, the fire department expands that. And this would change the relative mix of headquarters versus substation. And this doesn't identify that necessarily. It just creates the possibility that there would be an expanded Walden in that location with the fire department there, and then another location for the fire department as well.
So graphically, the difference between 1 and 2 is on the second line. On this picture, you've got a redone fire and police station.
Right, so that moves off of the buildings with no program, and it moves off of the first line
And you
with
lose-
the new building.
You lose some money down the road.
That's right.
Got it.
And you'll see the costs of these scenarios as well, because we've developed those, at least as an estimate for them. The next one turns very specifically to the DPW itself. And here, this is the same scenario, in effect. I should mention, in effect, the buildings with renovation in these C scenarios is our B scenario.
Got it.
In other words, that's what we see you can do. And if you keep those buildings and expand them, with the costs identified in B, become a part of this.
This is what you get.
Right.
Okay.
In this case, this is the same case. The DPW remains on its existing facility. We expand the buildings and we create new buildings on the site.
No, this one is.
Excuse me, that's right. I knew I'd get confused at some point. The first of these is a DPW on a new site. And this therefore frees the two Keyes Road buildings, setting 141 aside. This creates a new site there. The next scenario is the one we've just looked at in B, which is keeping it in the central facility. And as you see there, all that happens is water and sewer and DPW get some new facilities on an existing site. The next scenario is the main police, fire, and dispatch at a new location, taken as its own element. This was sort of incorporated in some of our first two scenarios, but when we were meeting with staff, they felt it would be valuable to consider this separately and look at the cost for it separately. So in this case, the fire department and police on a new site, and Walden Street is then made surplus. And then finally, a town administration similarly considered separately, looking at all of the town administrative sources as a new site, looking at how many square feet, what acreage it would require, as we identify, as you'll see. and then those 3 buildings surplus. Now, one of the things this does, that we in this, which I'd like to offer as a thought right now, is one of the scenarios we were looking at is if the DPW moved off of its current location, freeing that location, it may create an opportunity for town facility, central administrative center, and perhaps more on that site, which is a very central location. That's one of the things we're wrestling with, where could such a thing be, and what happens to this building. And in fact, the opportunity to develop a scenario, it's sort of a neat situation, because you find a site, you build DPW, you move DPW, you haven't disrupted their operation, you clear the site, you develop it in a much more environmentally sensitive way, because that site is, as you pointed up, close, it has wetlands, it's an extremely sensitive site. Being able to move it from sort of a horizontal, sort of truck-based use into a building that would have a smaller footprint, that would be, you know, a sort of administrative, much more sensitive to the site. Again, that could be built, and then everything moves, all the departments move out, so it's a very nice sequence.
Yep. Okay.
Which gets us to, once again, the numbers. These numbers are, well, they are what you see. Keep in mind that these are, some include the others. I guess what it would be fair to suggest is that the first or second scenario, which might vary depending on what property becomes available for construction, cost in the range of 60, 62, 63 million dollars, and I'll use that number to the right because it's really the one you want to think about, not the construction cost.
Sure.
DPW at a new location costs about 46 million. Those are really the 2 big items. If you combine those, 108, 110, 115 million dollars, that is what you're looking at for a comprehensive reconfiguration of the town. It does not include site acquisition costs for whatever place, of course.
Does it include potential income from excess property?
It does not.
It does not.
We're asked to look at that.
No, I just-
All we can do is give you the figures again to work with, and also so in this case, that's why you're looking at those various buildings in the graphic, and you're seeing at the bottom line what buildings become potentially surplus. I'm pleased to see your pen hasn't leapt off the desk.
My colleague. I was holding on real tight.
Okay, that's good.
Just about left. Well, that's quite a bit of work, obviously. I thought I heard you say maybe I just was hoping, but thought I heard you say that there was a recommendation?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Nice try, though, right?
Yeah. What I would say is that we can, for example, that little scenario that I mentioned is very attractive to us. We're intrigued by it. We don't see it as our place, frankly, to recommend to you that this is the thing you should do, because it depends on so many factors, finding a site for DPW in that case, and making that work, and obviously raising a very substantial amount of money to do it. So what we've attempted to give you here, and we'll give you in again that, you know, sort of very substantial. I know Kate is all prepared; she's got a binder ready to stick everything in. That there is a lot of information here, and we're happy to work with you also, of course, in understanding it and making use of it to perhaps seek opportunities towards an end. But if you don't find the site, you know, you can't go that way, and it becomes other possibilities that
Well,
would
but
take
therein
you.
lies a dilemma. You know, if we wanted that scenario,
Yes,
that's terrific as long as we've got sites.
yes,
And if we don't, and we start on B or something like that, and tomorrow afternoon, the site opens up, we're in, not trouble, but we go,
No,
rats.
I understand, and that is, I understand.
mean,
One thing that this does give you, though, and you'll be able to target your spending, both in the context of the A scenarios, looking at which buildings you know you will be investing in. Because in several scenarios, perhaps expansion is an appropriate use. And so you can target those and not necessarily preclude the larger goal.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I'd like to see as an overlay on this is, you talked about renovations on all of the properties. The big three main ones, so to speak, is here, Kaiser Road, and the fire safety, public safety. Is again, if we decide to embark on something, it'd be very easy on the one hand to say, let's do C.
Sounds good to me.
No, I know, but forget for a moment the fact that it's a lot of money, but we'd have to stage this, and the thing that I think for me is missing here is what do we have to do when? I suspect the fire station, I don't know, so I'm just making it up. I suppose the fire station and the police station could stay that way and function perfectly fine for some number of years. Same with this building, same with Kaiser Road. I suspect not the same number of years though. So, as we look at what we would have to do, scenarios that you put, it's also a timing kind of thing. Is one more urgent than another, that we fix this problem now, and having to fix that problem drives us to one of the scenarios. If we've really got to fix public works now, then we can't wait around for some land to become available.
Right.
We've got to act now, so that means, part of C is gone, right?
That's one of the reasons that we identified those as separate scenarios, so that you can wrestle with that very question, because that is, at least at this point, you have sort of the cost of those different scenarios before you.
Right.
And perhaps, I'm not sure, but it would seem like, in a way, you're setting out as a logical next step, hearing, and he's been here weeks now, so, you should be ready to go. But, in effect, having a serious assessment of where the pain is operationally, seeing what dollars are attached to each of those needs, and then prioritize accordingly, and perhaps set within that framework what's realistic.
Yeah, the pain approach, if you will. The other approach is suffer the pain and go for what you believe to be a better long-term solution. So yes, we should do public works right now because it really needs it, but it would be really great if we could find a spot for it and relocate the town of it. So let's just strap ourselves in and kind of deal with it for a while.
Yeah, the way we thought about that particular scenario was that that site keeps government in the center and recovers a truly spectacular site for use. So if you think of it more aesthetically, you can say that's a way to go. But the DPW really is under a great deal of stress.
It is.
So I'm not sure that we could tell you how long you have to look, but that's part of the issue. How long is it going to take you to find a new DPW site?
Does it make sense to put out a request?
Control of the treasure hunt either.
Yeah.
You just don't keep looking and finally find it. Might show up tomorrow, it might never show up.
Yeah. I mean, you can request proposals.
Yeah, sure.
And see what happens.
Kate, do you want to have any comments?
No, just other than to thank the team for all their time. This was a lot, and to thank the town staff and particularly my team, because we sort of spearheaded this. So Ryan Orr, Kate Hanley, the police chief, Dave Wood from CMLP and my office, and we spent a great deal of time sort of going over this. And we too, I think if you asked every member, particularly the senior management team and probably the other division managers, what the highest and most pressing priority is, you're going to get, everybody has a different answer. So I think we have a couple of questions that come out of this that need immediate answers, and one is, do we have a funding strategy in place? Because there are immediate needs. Is the building going to fall down tomorrow? No. We've been doing a very good job, and I say we, meaning Ryan and his team, has been doing a very good job of being able to triage things that are happening that would be an immediate threat to being able to inhabit the buildings, and really working in some preventative maintenance. So I guess my question, and it's rhetorical right now, but it's, at some point we have to decide that the municipal facilities are a priority for the community. And so the question is, when is that? How does that come about? What do we, as the town staff, have to do to engage the citizens so that they know that? Part of the things that we've talked about is we haven't done a good job of touring people through the building and showing the inadequacies, because we're working here, and usually when people come, we don't want to say, oh, come on into my small, terrible office. Let me show you how the window leaks and blah, blah, blah. It's just not something that we do. And so, taking that flip, part aside, sort of how do we do that in a way that makes the citizenry feel informed? And I think it's a campaign that we should start. We should open the dialogue and have some open houses and get the community's idea, because I think the community will tell us whether it's police and fire or the townhouse or DPW or none. And we don't have that part of this study yet. We needed this tool.
No, absolutely.
And so, just
think
for the
we've
community,
identified-
we're going to put this out onto the website tomorrow.
Please.
And then hopefully hold a public forum sometime in the fall where we can get some feedback on it, and then
I
do
think
that.
it's a great idea. The forum need to be very well structured though, because this is so much information and so many moving parts that'll be challenging, to say the least. Did you have a question?
I was just going to comment that Salem recently got some MAPC money to do, I believe it was MAPC money, to do a campaign, in this case for affordable housing, to let the community know, and it was a 5-part video and public forum kind of process. I hear you in terms of a campaign, in terms of informing the community about the needs, because we haven't been as vocal about the municipal needs as we need to be. So there are strategies, and that's just one example.
Stephen?
Just to build on Kate's point, and TBAs, as I sit here looking at this and having some experience with this, just like prioritizing, especially when you have large projects that are getting some momentum, and then you've got other large but not as large projects that are needs, it really does call for an exercise in prioritization and education for the community. I think one of the things that I would look to my colleagues in town here for is, what would our idea be on what the priorities, what that list and timeline should look like based on operational demands and kind of behind the scenes pressures and information we have, and then present that to a community forum and then educate the community as to why the list that we think is what we think is the prioritization list is the way it is, and then get feedback on that. And we may see, well, we didn't really think about this consideration or this site or this building reuse. But certainly there are things that the community just couldn't get into the weeds deep enough to understand why a certain aspect of a building is inadequate. So I guess I would say, as I look at next steps, that would be it for me. I don't know, Kate, how you feel about that, but soon too. I think you're right. Soon. We don't want to let this set.
I think why don't we plan to do the following? Maybe at our next select board meeting, I don't know when we should be involved in this, because I think you're right. What I would like to hear is what you guys think.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's our next meeting or a month from now, whenever it is, for you to come in and let's get an agenda item to just talk about it. And you can tell them we just have a dialogue about that and see where we go from there.
Maybe
Talk about public.
give us a little bit of time.
Yeah,
to
next
delve in, maybe.
Tuesday.
Yeah, sure.
Did you say Tuesday? I like
No,
the deadline, so
I think
wanted
just
to-
when we meet, Stephen, it's just a matter of, when you guys are ready, let's get it on the agenda.
Yes,
And let's do it as soon as we can. We
while it's fresh in our heads, sure.
get on with this. Fellas, thank you very much, not only for the work you did, but for being here tonight and
Thank you.
so patiently walking us through this mound of data. Well, thanks very much. We greatly appreciate it.
And congratulations. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the committee liaison reports. Susan, you want to start?
And I'll mention them in the report. On July 30th, I went to the Trails Committee meeting, and they've done a lot of work on the Baker Ave boat launch. Boat launch with plantings and fence installation and having wood chip application. And they have a number of other items, that was a big one. Also, on the 30th, I went to trustees of town donations. They're looking for a member, and they talked about their investment and withdrawal strategies, which is important for that.
So
those funds.
who's leaving? Do you remember who's leaving?
It's somebody that's already left. It's Janet Rhodes Friedman is the chair now,
Right.
but the person, they're one short right now.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
On the 31st, I went with you, Mike, to meet some members of the Concord Business Partnership to talk about the Economic Vitality Committee. We got some good feedback from them. The planning board also needs a member. They had someone that they thought, well, they had someone and then the person didn't feel like they could make the commitment, so they're a member short. They talked about the continued discussion of the possible bylaw changes.
Right.
And West Concord Advisory needs 2 members. On the 8th of August, the Middle School Building Committee met and evaluated the finalists for the OPM, and then Stephen was at the meeting after that he mentioned in his report. I wasn't at that meeting. Historical Commission met also on August 8th, and they're discussing possible amendments to the demolition delay bylaw. And what they're doing is each committee member is picking 3 towns in the state and looking at their laws and seeing and talking to people, what works, what doesn't work, et cetera, to possibly make some changes. On the 20th, Lori Trahan was here, and Stephen already mentioned that. That was my first time seeing her. And then the planning board had a hearing on the 20th also at Harvey Wheeler about 1440 Main Street. There was a lot of people there. And they had a lot of good questions, and I think they had got some good information. But my takeaway from that was that it was, for the most part, way more civil than the hearing, over the winter. There was a lot, and there were a lot of the same people there. Actually, there were more at this hearing. But, so I think the changes that the developer has made have made a difference. But we'll see what happens. So it has to go to the zoning
Yeah.
after
CBA,
this.
yeah.
And then my last thing is, we've convened the Finance Subcommittee of the Middle School Building Committee, and that's going to meet this Thursday. The meeting was posted, it's at Ripley, and it's 5 of us on the building committee to kind of get on this from the get-go and be aware of.
Great,
That's it.
thank you, you were busy. Linda?
I had a marathon 3 nights in a row with the zoning board of appeals and a joint meeting with the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, and then I joined Susan for the planning board, one of the meetings. Let me say that for the joint meeting, it was impressive. The planning board came before us at our last meeting and talked about a couple of ideas that they hope to bring before the town meeting.
Right.
And as per the Envision Concord, where it's encouraged to talk to other departments and get feedback from the community, the joint meeting of the planning board and the ZBA, the planning included taking those ideas that had been presented to us at the last select board meeting and asking the ZBA to respond to them, because they're on the front line in terms of being asked for variances and all kinds of things. And it was an extremely productive session, and it would be great if all of the articles that are coming up before us have that kind of feedback from other departments or other entities. That is not just often we get up at our public forums or public hearings and we're just reporting out, and we don't always have the feedback that we're looking for. But this was an actual working session with the intent of critiquing, so very helpful. And those were the 3 meetings that I attended.
Terry?
So I've basically been out of town, but I did go to one important meeting the HDC had about the library expansion. And I know Jean was there, maybe several of you were there. It was kind of a long presentation, very detailed, and a number of new pieces of information came up. So at the end of that meeting, the HDC decided to do a site visit. And I understand they've done the site visit maybe a few days ago now, and I don't know what happened with that. But the 2 boards are talking, things are moving along, so we'll have to wait and see.
Right. Well, thank you. I too was away, but what I will add to relevance to what both of you said is our affordable housing home rule petition bills have been filed in the Senate. So they've cleared one hurdle, that is they've gone through council and found to be okay. And so Senator Baird has filed those on our behalf, so that's a good first step. So we'll see. All right. Thank you all very much. No miscellaneous correspondence. Committee nominations.
Okay, we have one appointment, which is Cynthia.
No, nomination.
Oh, sorry. Nominations. Yeah. So we have one nomination, which is Cynthia Rainey from the school committee as a representative to the capital planning committee.
Right, thank you. And we have no appointments this evening, so next is public comments. Please.
Brooks Reed, 366 Estabrook Road.
And Susanna Kay, 366 Estabrook Road. We're speaking as taxpayers.
So tonight, we didn't expect Kate Hodges to be here. We had something to say to Kate Hodges. And as you know, Kate Hodges has been the town manager over the last 2 months, acting town manager. And a remarkable thing happened. Incredible transparency came to pass in town, and we'd like to honor Kate.
Say thank you.
In fact, I'd like to stand up because I have great respect for what you've done. Could you come over here and sit in the seat? I would
That's coming from people who
You have a
filed
public
4 open
comment,
meeting
right?
laws.
It is a public comment about Kate, and let me read it to you.
She's
I
done
have,
a job here, and it's our public comment.
so
Can you
Kate,
say that?
Kate has had 2 agendas with executive session, and the remarkable quality about them is that they actually give transparency about what's happening in executive session. I'd like to read them to you. The first one here is from June 3rd, and it says executive session for the purpose of discussing employee contracts, town manager, so we know what contracts are being discussed, an open meeting law complaint dated May 16, 2019 from R. Nislik. So any person who hears that an open meeting law complaint is being discussed would know how to ask for it from the town and actually find out about what's going on. And that is a remarkable level of openness compared to what we've seen in the past. Now, the other agenda for executive session that you published was executive session to consider the purpose and value of real property, parcel 2455-3-1, 24 Westgate Park, because discussing an open session would be detrimental to the town in negotiating position. And again, we know exactly what you're talking about. Now, what's so significant about this is that for years and years and years, executive sessions have been described as, and I wrote some down here, executive session to discuss ongoing litigation, no mention of what litigation. So people in the town have no idea what's going on, absolutely not a clue. Another one that's commonly occurs is executive session to discuss matters of litigation. Again, what litigation? Nobody knows. And so we'd like to honor you, Kate, for doing a remarkable job of bringing transparency to our government. Thank you so much.
And following the open meeting law as stated, so that citizens don't have to bother the expense of filing open meeting law complaints against recurrent complaints, as seems to be reoccurring now, going back to the old lack of transparency as on our current agenda, which now goes back to executive session for the purposes of discussing ongoing litigation, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. This completely violates the open meeting law yet again. Thank you.
So could you please tell us what matters of litigation you were speaking about in executive session? Are you able to tell us that?
Thank you for your comment.
So you are declining, I just want to be clear, you're declining to answer that. Is that correct?
I think
Thank you.
Kate,
Is there
thank
any
you so
other
much.
Thank you,
public
Kate,
comment?
for doing a job that
Fabulous.
is
Thank you so
respectable.
much.
Please.
My name is Marjorie Daggett, and I live at 80 Deaconess Road. I want to commend the committee on the establishment of the Capital Planning Task Force, but I want to comment that I do not feel that it goes far enough. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. I do not speak for the board or the league as a whole, but I cannot help but note that last year, or not last year, but this last spring, at the town meeting, when the league wrote out its recommendations for Article 7, which were the capital projects in the budget, they were asking for a long-range capital planning committee. And many of the speakers echoed the same. I think that at that time, I think that there is a need for a full committee. I think it should be a citizens committee, so that the citizens are the ones responsible, like the financial committee, that the citizens are the ones who are responsible for investigating all the capital planning and the duration of each and every capital project, and how this affects not only the town, as you all do plan, as the town municipal bond rating, but it also affects the taxpayers. I feel that the committee should not be such a short-term, a real committee should not be a short-term 6 months committee. It should be a long-term, at least 3-year committee that produces a report for the citizens whom I think are interested in what the capital planning and how it's done and what should be done. having listened to this presentation, I can see the needs, that this would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any addition, yes, Nick?
Nick Pappas, 300 Virginia Road. Quick one. On these cell tower proposals, personally, if the main issue before us is public safety, I don't think proposals from a single carrier further that at all. Because if Verizon is the only one who gets additional capacity in the center of town, I happen to have an AT&T service, they ain't gonna help me if I have an emergency.
Yep, got it, Nick. Mr. Weeks?
Thank you, one and all. My name is Stuart Weeks. My address is 100 Newbury Court. I'm the founder of the Center for American Studies here in Concord. We're in our 42nd year. I'm a native son of the town, and I'm really heartened in this sharing tonight. I don't think much is gained by pointing fingers, but I appreciate deeply the concern, the heart that was expressed. And Kate, my respects, it's not the easiest position to be put into, but wonderful, wonderful. I wanted to offer a brief update on the Concord Nobel Award for Peace, which involves representatives of about 75 institutions in Concord, from Bank of America to our local Brooks, Neshoba, and Fenn schools. This is an award. We had the advisor to the Prime Minister of India with us on the 4th of July, who's nominated someone by the name of Mahatma Gandhi as a recipient of the award, who was turned down 5 times by the Nobel Peace Prize for political reasons. The Concord Nobel Award for Peace is anything but political. It's an expression of what our town means and stands for. Concord means peace. It also means with the heart, and it means covenant. This is an award that would be given annually to an individual in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, and in the cultural sphere who are addressing the fundamental prerequisites for peace. Everybody wants peace, but we perhaps don't often enough ask ourselves the question, how do we actually get it? What are the essential prerequisites for peace? The award won't be given by kings in our country, as it is in Sweden and Norway. Henry David Thoreau said, that is the uncommon school we want. Instead of noblemen, let us have noble villages of men, and we'd add women. This award would be given by students who bear the future to the recipients. Nominees to date include Mahatma Gandhi, Patch Adams, who's, in terms of addressing the fundamental prerequisites for peace, Patch suggests that medicine isn't a business. It's an art and it's a science. And when we turn it into a business, we end up working, the doctors end up working for the insurers, the reimbursers, and it ends up becoming a business that makes a killing. Iatrogenic illnesses, soon to exceed heart disease, and cancer is the #1 cause of death. So this is just an update. The nominees are coming in. They'll be open until the 31st of November. The recipients will be determined on January 6th. And by the time we've concluded, I met today with a new headmaster of Middlesex School who's just come in. We expect there'll be representatives of 100 institutions in Concord, because we also see this as contributing to the upcoming 400th anniversary of our town, the first non-native inland community in this country. And in this way, this award is unprecedented in that it's not just involves the cultural sphere, but it involves also representatives of the political sphere and the economic sphere as well. So thank you for allowing that moment to share.
Thank you for coming. Any additional comments? Seeing none, I would sorry. Mr. Old.
Lansing Old, 607 Lowell Road. As of July 2nd, the town has spent $583 $30,000 on this lawsuit. You realize that?
Yes, I do realize that.
And you're destroying the lives of 3 families in the town of Concord? 3 generous families. How much longer is this going to go on?
Thank you for your comment. Is there any additional comments?
That's all you have to
See-
say?
I'm sorry?
That's all you have to say?
Yes, that's all I have to say.
Pathetic.
Any other additional comments? No. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.